Hello everybody. We just have one more chapter for the Sermon on the Mount. We're in Matthew 7. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. I find this an interesting subject. There's a lot to talk about. Of course, the first part seems to tie in with stuff we've talked about before. We are all guilty of sin. Yes, some are greater than others, but sin is sin. And so we don't really have the right to judge others of sin, because we also have sin. It says that the same way you judge others, you will be judged. That is true. Everyone will be judged fairly on Judgment Day. The main point, however, is for self-reflection. Some people might want to use this verse very ironically. They think this verse is an excuse to do whatever they want. They judge others that judge them. It reminds me of have you ever noticed how humble is such a strange word? Because it's the one thing that you can't call yourself, or else it's not true. This is similar for the opposite reason. You can only use this verse for yourself. You can't tell someone to not judge you. But then he ends that section in an interesting way. Let's read verse 6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, and then turn and tear you to pieces. This is an interesting way to end it, because basically he's telling us to not lose discernment. Just because you shouldn't judge others doesn't mean that you can just hang out with bad people or vote for bad politicians or anything like that. And as I said, these verses are mostly just for self-reflection. You are not as good as you might think. Check yourself. Some might find this next section a bit controversial, but let's see if we can figure it out. We're reading verse 7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be opened. This makes it sound like God is a genie, but I think I have figured out exactly what Jesus is saying here. The first three parts, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you, those three parts cannot be separated in order to understand this verse for what it is. If you separate them, then he does sound like a genie. Let's take a look. I would say that the second part is really the first action you should take. Seek. What does seek mean? It means to seek the Lord, to seek his ways, to seek his goodness, to seek his righteousness. To understand what you want, you must understand what God wants. Then you have to keep knocking, aka you have to keep asking. Granted, you might get what you want the first time, but more likely you will have to keep asking. This is to make you ponder if the thing you're asking for is really important, and it shows that you actually want it. Only then it will be given to you. And that's what Jesus is saying. It seems strange that it's written in that order, but I would say that it's either written that way to grab people's attention, or it was different before translation. Either way, the message seems pretty clear. Then he gives an analogy. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Jesus is saying, even though you people are flawed, you still give good things to your children. I am God. I am the definition of good, so don't you think that I would give you what you need? This is important to remember, and good news for us. And as we've mentioned, he's not going to give you something evil. You wouldn't give your child an AK-47, so God will not give you something you shouldn't have. He ends this section in an interesting way again. Verse 12. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. This line is taken from a saying that had been said for a long time. It might not even have had its origins in Christianity or Jewish settings, but the interesting thing about it originally was that it was, "What you would not want done to you, don't do to anyone else." But Jesus puts a positive spin on it and said, "What you would want done to you, do to others." You've probably have heard this verse called the Golden Rule. I think it was in a VeggieTales episode. Basically, we need to be nice to people, and that sums up all the Old Testament laws. Which I almost feel is a bit of foreshadowing, because later, Jesus is asked what the greatest commandment is, and he says, "Love God and love your neighbor." So really, that's what sums up life. Love other people. Well, that seems like a good way to end. Love you guys.